Amid all the hubbub about wrestling programs returning to network television, coming soon to cable, or existing shows dealing with ratings woes, the 20-year anniversary of WWE SmackDown as a series is upon us. On Thursday, August 26, 1999, the very first weekly episode of SmackDown, the pilot from 4 months earlier doesn't count, was broadcast, taped 2 nights earlier in Kansas City. The blue-tinted companion piece to the wildly popular Raw is War would become the ideal pick-me-up for both school-age kids and 9-to-5ers alike as they slog through the week, providing them a 2-hour jolt of adrenaline with just 1 day to go before the weekend mercifully arrived. In the days before brand splits and secondary treatment, SmackDown was basically Raw with different lighting and a heat machine, plus Michael Cole yelling his sentences in a manner that makes his current commentary feel like prime Gordon Soley. For this list, we go back to the start of the run, to that August night in 1999 when SmackDown became a part of our weekly diet, when Attitude was still king, to see where everybody from that premiere is today. Mason Ryan, Stevie Ray, Earthquake, Alundra Blaze, Norman Smiley, Zach Gowen, Bam Bam Bigelow, Ahmed Johnson, Torrie Wilson, Buff, Bagwell, Robert Gibson, Dave Taylor, Terry Taylor, and Godfather's Holmes. Dwayne Gill, Adam Bomb, Michael Hayes, Cor Von, S.A. Rios, Jim Manai, the manager from Kai and Tai, Jim Powers, Francine, Jack Swagger, Mean Gene, Fat Chick Thriller, Duke the Dumpster, Oklahoma Manta. What happened to that wrestler? Some were main eventing, which leaves me lamenting. What happened to that wrestler? Some since long forgotten, but their memories live on. Jim Ross. While Michael Cole would serve as the primary voice soon after, good old JR manned the desk for that August 26th debut, sporting a soft cast from when Triple H broke his arm on Raw earlier that week. Ross today is a broadcaster for All Elite Wrestling and the co-host of the Grilling JR podcast alongside Conrad Thompson. Jerry Lawler. Lawler provided color commentary for the first year and a half of SmackDown's existence and sporadically through the years that followed. Lawler currently co-hosts the Jerry Lawler Show podcast, still makes guest appearances for WWE and other promotions, and in 2019 has even wrestled in half a dozen matches as his 70th birthday approaches. Billy Gunn. Badass Billy was in the midst of salvaging his dignity after going face to arse at SummerSlam days earlier and scored a non-title win here over IC champ Jeff Jarrett. Still in tremendous shape at age 55, Gunn works as a producer for All Elite Wrestling and still wrestles, having competed in at least 15 matches this year alone. Jeff Jarrett. Double J was in his 6th and final reign as Intercontinental Champion and was also under 2 months away from making his infamous WWE exit, bound for Vince Russo-run WCW. Jarrett still wrestles the occasional match at age 52 and currently works in WWE Creative as a backstage producer. Miss Kitty. Stacey Carter, the then significant other of Jerry Lawler, had just debuted for the company that week, playing the assistant to Deborah while also accompanying Jarrett to the ring. Carter still appears on the independent scene from time to time and is the owner of the Carter Hair Studio in Frisco, Texas. Deborah. It may have been a bit crass, but you can't deny that Deborah's gimmick of unbuttoning her suit jacket in order to distract Jarrett's opposition did tend to work in more cases than not. Long retired from wrestling, Deborah Marshall was, as of 2017, pursuing a master's degree in criminal justice at the University of Alabama. Chyna. Chyna soon began distancing herself from Triple H, moving into the role of regular singles competitor, beginning with her aggressive overtures towards Jeff Jarrett and his IC title. Tragically, Joanie Lawler, after spending part of her final years teaching English in Japan, passed away in April 2016 from alcohol and drug intoxication, aged 46. The Undertaker. At the time, Undertaker was one half of the WWE Tag Team Champions alongside Big Show, doing a devilish mentor gimmick where he attempted to toughen Big Show up through some apparently hellish off-screen tests. Still going today at 54, Undertaker wrestles a handful of matches per year and has recently signed a lengthy contract to stay with the WWE. Big Show. Still in his first year on the WWE roster, which really feels like an eternity ago, Show reigned as tag team champion in a short-lived run with The Undertaker before embarking on his first world title run. At age 47, Paul White remains with the WWE, having recently received clearance for an in-ring return following 2 hip surgeries. Paul Bearer. The always expressive Bearer was in his familiar role, flanking The Undertaker, though Taker's forthcoming injury hiatus would separate the legendary duo, and they wouldn't reunite until WrestleMania 20, 4.5 years later. Sadly, William Moody passed away in March 2013 from a heart attack, age 58. X-Pac. X-Pac, along with Kane, had dropped the tag belts at that SummerSlam to Undertaker and Big Show, and friction was being teased between he and his partner, particularly at this SmackDown. Now considering himself retired from the ring after a 30-year career, Sean Waltman hosts his own podcast series, X-Pac 12360. Kane. Having dissension with X-Pac was part of a whirlwind month for the Big Red Monster, who magically regained the ability to speak weeks earlier, in addition to being a tag team champion for 13 whole days. All but inactive today in his 50s, Glenn Jacobs is doing quite well for himself in politics, being elected the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee in 2018. Farouk. At this point, Farouk and Bradshaw were simply the acolytes, recently free of the Ministry of Darkness, now simply two hard-hitting brawlers who dismantled opponents without anyone guiding them. Now 61 years old, Ron Simmons still makes appearances at various Legends functions and is generally always visible at the annual Hall of Fame ceremony. Bradshaw. The younger half of the Acolytes still had so much ahead of him in his career, including an unexpected run as WWE Champion 5 years later, but for now he was simply a two-time tag team champ. Known for his other career as a stock market expert, John Layfield provides analysis for Fox Business Channel and is also Senior Vice President of Northeast Securities. Big Boss Man. When the Boss Man kidnapped Al Snow's Chihuahua Pepper and eventually served it to Snow for lunch, most assumed that was as heinous as it would get. But no, there was still casket theft to come. Unfortunately, the talented and prolific Ray Traylor passed away in September 2004 of a heart attack at age 41. Al Snow. Snow's 1999 was an interesting one, feuding with Mannequin and Deerheads, getting thrown into icy rivers, and attempting to rescue a doomed dog, all which seems perfectly par for the Attitude Era. Still active in his mid-50s, Snow is also the current owner of Ohio Valley Wrestling and continues training tomorrow's wrestling stars. Road Dogg. Road Dogg was between gigs at this point, floating on his own away from DX and the New Age Outlaws, but the following month reunited as a heel with his old stablemates. Having worked in a creative capacity at WWE for several years, Brian James resigned as SmackDown lead writer after WrestleMania 35, but remains a contributor to the product. Chris Jericho. In addition to being significant as the premiere of Weekly SmackDown, the episode marked the first televised WWE match for Y2J, who took a DQ loss to Road Dogg following a table powerbomb. Still near the top of the business at 48, Jericho is a headline talent and possibly future world champion for All Elite Wrestling. Tony Chimel. Usually we'd be inclined to gloss over the ring announcers for features like this, but since Tony Chimel got to throw a tackle on this show, he merits inclusion for sure. Aside from occasionally being Edge's personal ring announcer, Chimel has primarily worked behind the scenes in production in WWE over the past several years. Howard Finkel. The greatest ring announcer in wrestling history was being used in a comedy capacity at this point, carrying on the mantle of bumbling Chris Jericho lackey once held by Ralphus. Sadly, the Fink has been struggling with health issues in recent times, having reportedly suffered a stroke in the summer of 2018. Our best wishes for Howard to get well. Ken Shamrock. The world's most dangerous man was in his final lap as a WWE performer at the time he and Jericho were at odds with one another, and their match for Unforgiven never came to pass. Shamrock still wrestles on occasion, mostly for Australia's Battle Championship Wrestling, and is an ambassador for BioAccelerator stem cell treatments. Stephanie McMahon. If you've never watched WWE from this time frame, seeing Stephanie playing it soft-spoken and innocuous is rather jarring, like the first time you ever watched Robin Williams play a villainous sociopath. Stephanie, of course, remains deeply ingrained in the family business, serving WWE as its chief brand officer. Test. Just days earlier, Test wrestled in the match of his life, a highly dramatic Greenwich street fight with Shane McMahon, in which Test won the right to see Shane's sister, whom he proposed to on SmackDown. Sadly, Andrew Martin passed away far too soon in March 2009 from an oxycodone overdose, just days shy of his 34th birthday. Rodney. And now we come to the Mean Street Posse, the toughest trio of sweater vest wearing hoodlums you ever saw, two of whom were childhood chums of Shane McMahon. Rodney Lionheart was one of those two genuine Greenwich grapplers before retiring in New Jersey, where he operates a landscaping business. Pete Gas. Shane McMahon's other neighborhood ne'er-do-well has a leg up on his fellow posse members, being the only one of the three to win the hardcore title on more than one occasion. In addition to making guest appearances on Edge and Christian's WWE WWE Network show, Pete Gasparino has worked in sales for office supply company WB Mason. Joey Abs. The group's ringer was a trainee of the Hardy Boys and added a little more substantial muscle to a stable that mostly existed as comic relief. Retired from wrestling since 2001, Jason Arndt moved back to North Carolina, where he worked along with his father at their body shop. Pat Patterson. The Stooges were very much babyfaces at this stage of the game, matching up with the Mean Street Posse in what most agree is the greatest feud in all of 1999. At 78, longtime creative genius Patterson still contributes to WWE as a consultant and recently became the oldest champion in WWE history after Drake Maverick tripped and fell. Gerald Brisco. It may not have been his partnership with his brother and fellow amateur wrestling prodigy Jack, but he and Pat Patterson charmed audiences with their slapstick comedy as WWE elder statesmen. Still associated with WWE after 3.5 decades, the 73-year-old Brisco, when he's not double-crossing Patterson at reunion shows, works as a talent scout for the company. Shane McMahon. Shane O'Mac turned heads with his match against Test at SummerSlam, and though he pressed on as a Triple H loyalist, his uninhibited performance made it hard to keep him as a heel for much longer. Still the best in the world, Shane remains one of the most prolific heels on WWE programming as of this video. Mankind. On the heels of his third and final WWE Championship reign coming to an end, Mankind wrestled Shane McMahon on this show, and after interference from Triple H, did the honors for the best in the world. What a guy. Foley still makes occasional appearances on WWE programming, while primarily touring with his stand-up comedy and other speaking engagements. Michael Cole. While he would soon be the primary voice of SmackDown for close to the next decade, Cole's usage on this broadcast was to conduct an interview with the injured Stone Cold Steve Austin. Cole, of course, has been the primary voice of WWE Monday Night Raw for over 11 years and helps produce other WWE announcers from backstage. Stone Cold Steve Austin. He may have been injured, but you knew that WWE was going to make sure its biggest star was involved in the premiere SmackDown episode in some capacity. Austin has been involved in many media endeavors in retirement, including his podcast, The Steve Austin Show, and currently a USA Network program entitled Straight Up Steve Austin. Tori. The former Sable stalker and eventual Kane girlfriend spent her time in between feuding with women's champion Ivory and for some reason tried to wrestle her virtually unclothed on this show. Retired since 2001, Terry Pock resides in Portland, Oregon, where she runs her own yoga studio. Ivory. The reigning women's champion was victimized by Tori in a very brief evening gown match on the broadcast in what was certainly a much different time for women's wrestling in the WWE. Long retired from the ring, Lisa Moretti operates Downtown Dog, a pet grooming and boarding business in Friday Harbor, Washington. Luna Vachon. The legendary villainess inserted herself in the aftermath of the Ivory-Tori match, having previously tried to attack Ivory at SummerSlam only days earlier, and later lost to Ivory at Unforgiven. Unfortunately, Gertrude Elizabeth Vachon passed away from an overdose in August 2010 at the age of 48. Lillian Garcia. New to the company in 1999, Garcia interviewed Triple H and Chyna backstage prior to the main event, taped only one day after her debut as ring announcer on Raw is War. The seemingly ageless Garcia still makes occasional WWE appearances while hosting the Chasing Glory with Lillian Garcia podcast on Podcast One. Shawn Michaels. Appearing sporadically since his apparently final match at WrestleMania 14 the previous year, Michaels was still WWE commissioner and guest refereed the main event, in which he turned heel, though the angle was never followed up on. Michaels has been mostly retired since 2010 and currently teaches the finishing class at the WWE Performance Center alongside Terry Taylor. The Rock. Despite the show being named after one of his many catchphrases, Dwayne Johnson could not score the win on the first airing, falling short to Triple H after the assist from Michaels. Johnson, as you may have noticed, has superseded wrestling, becoming one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, his most recent theatrical release being Hobbs & Shaw. Triple H. Paul Levesque's first successful defense as a world champion of any sort came here against The Rock, and it would take an unearthly powerhouse to wrest the belt from his grasp, by which we mean Vince McMahon 3 weeks later. One of the most powerful men in WWE today, Levesque is the company's executive vice president of talent, live events and creative, while also running NXT. Thanks for watching. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. You can follow us on Twitter at Cultaholic. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do here at Cultaholic, you can pledge to us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And most importantly, don't forget to hit subscribe and join us.